What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mythic Conversations, your Wednesday night hangout to talk about all things Legion. As always, I am your host, Jeremy Gerard. I'm a Mythic Legions collector and customizer who also has the distinct privilege of being the director of sales and marketing for Four Horsemen Studios. That means that all the content that you see at sourcehorseman.com is content that I have a hand in bringing you. If you want to see more of my work, you can check me out. Let me bring up my little banner here. Best place to do so is on Instagram at Mythic Customs, all one word. Of course, I'm always here every Wednesday night or almost every Wednesday night for this show, Mythic Conversations, the weekly show, like I said, where we cover all things Legions, Legions news, Legions customs, Legions whatever, Legions conversation. It's called Mythic Conversations because I want to do some back and forth. There is a chat here on YouTube. If you have any questions, if you want to talk about what I'm talking about, please, excuse me, please hit me up in the chat there. So let's see what is going on. Jacob, great stream earlier today. Thank you very much. Speaking of streams, I don't know if you guys caught it. If you're on the Mythic Legions Cabal, there's a really, really fun show. Every other Tuesday night, my friends Michael and Brad do a show called Legion's Lair, where they basically interview Mythic Legions fans. They ask them a number of questions, and then they get a tour of the toy room. So if you've ever wanted a pretty comprehensive tour of everything you see behind me, I was on last night. Thank you so much to those guys and their executive producer, Lauren, for having me on. It was an absolute blast to just talk to them for a few hours and to show them around the toy collection. So if you're on the Mythic Legions Cabal, check out Legion's Lair. It was episode 7, happened just last night. A lot of fun. Set me up for this evening. So that was really, really cool. The next one they do is in a few weeks, and they're going to have my friend Eric LeBron on. So I guarantee you that's going to be a fun discussion as well. Every week this show feels like an HBO special to me. Jeremy Gerard Raw. Well, I don't get too raw. It's pretty family friendly, but thank you very much. Okay, let's see what else is going on here. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, Mark saying super hyped for Legions Con this year. We are so pumped. So pumped. I'm actually, so I head out, let's see, not this coming weekend, but the weekend after. That's ToyCon New Jersey. So that's March 26th and 27th. So I will be headed to New Jersey that weekend to be a part of that show. I will be at the Four Horsemen Studios table, meeting and greeting everybody and just having a good time. But Legion Shop will also have a table right there as well. So I'll certainly be involved with that. There's going to be a number of super cool parts from the artists of Legion Shop. I'm also going to have a number of complete customs there for sale. So that's going to be a blast. But that weekend really starts a whole week that I'm going to be in New Jersey. I'll be in the studio that entire week, culminating that following Saturday, April 2nd, is actually an intern for a day event. It's the second of the intern for a day events that were part of the Mythic Legions Tactics campaign. So I'll be there straight through that. But on the topic of Legions Con, while I'm in New Jersey for that whole week, Joe and I are going to take a ride to the La Quinta in Secaucus to really scope the place out. Joe's already walked the floor a few times. He's done a walkthrough with me, but I've never been there physically. So I'm really excited to do that, to get a lay of the land and really start to picture how things are going to go. This past week, we started working on the schedule. So we are going to have, in addition to the giant ballroom, I think I'd mentioned there's like 5 breakout rooms. So we're starting to figure out what we're going to do in those breakout rooms, what kind of schedule we can have there, so we can start reaching out to a number of the exhibitors and vendors and artists that are involved with Legions Con to see who may want to do some of those workshops, some intimate workshops, real small. The rooms only hold maybe 20-ish, 25 people. So really kind of cool stuff. So super excited for that. And we've got a number of exhibitors that have signed on for Legions Con. I haven't even announced yet. Some really cool stuff that's part of the Independent Toy Creator Showcase. So lots more to come as we build towards Legions Con. So Mark, I'm super, super excited for that as well. Let's see what else here. Yeah, Eric, you're going to have a blast with Brad and Mike. Yes, Braku, I got rid of that con crud. I am feeling better. No celebrities or musical guests. Visionary. Yeah, no, we're not going to have Guar. Maybe next year. We'll see. So other stuff going on. So tonight we're going to talk about some news. There's definitely some stuff going on in the world of Legions. Looks like I'm trying to figure out. I get like this weird glare on my glasses, and I don't know. Yeah, I think it's the level of the camera, to be honest with you. Let me adjust my camera. While I'm actually on the air, I'll do some adjustments. Yeah, see, it's right on my lens. It just looks weird to me, but whatever. I guess I'll have to live with it, right? So some cool stuff going on. There's some news I do want to talk about. And then I do have a topic of conversation that I want to cover tonight. Nothing real complex, because I do know that we have some other news type stuff. Curtis saying Jeremy DeWitt will be there as a musical guest. We got some stuff we're working on, Curtis. I'm not ready to announce that yet, but it's gonna be a lot of fun. Slot Mac slot. Have I ever done a tutorial on adding sculpted details to customs? It's not something I do all that much. I feel like I did do a tutorial about using epoxy sculpt in the few times I've actually done it. I'm definitely not the best person to talk about that. My friend Zombie 13, he does a lot more stuff with that, but I have used epoxy sculpt in the past. It's like a 2-part sculpting compound to do some basic stuff like a mustache or things like that. So last week we had the test shot sale at Store Horseman. So as expected, that went lightning fast. Like we've always said with the test shots, they are a kind of fringe item. There's actually a lot of Legions collectors that aren't even into them. They're a fun little curiosity. They get a very, very small amount of them, and as expected, those things absolutely flew. If you watched the 4 Horsemen O'Clock show today, they had mentioned that all of those packages are now, if not on the way, ready to be picked up at the studio. So those should be arriving very, very soon. As soon as that sale was done, the announcement was made that this coming Saturday, March 19th, once again at 11 a.m. Eastern time, they're going to do the All-Stars 4 in-stock sale, which it's crazy, right? That we're just getting to an in-stock sale for All-Stars 4 now. It seems like All-Stars 4, those figures shipped so long ago. But it's been really hard. If you actually look at the calendar, there's been so many other things going on the calendar, between pre-orders like Poxis that ended the year, and then the reinforcement sale. There's been a lot of stuff going on, so there really was no great time to slot in that All-Stars 4 sale. Now seems to be a good time to get that done. They definitely had a lot of All-Stars 4 figures with them at ZoloCon a few weeks ago. But people ate them up. People loved them. That's a great wave. Obviously you got the 2 skeletons, Scaphoid and Tibius. You've got Vetus. You've got Sir Owain. So you've got that Mercurian Spartan type character and that super clean knight. as well as the 2 power contributes, Bryophytus and Mephitor, and then the Troll. The Troll at ZoloCon, they brought a bunch of both Stone Trolls and Forest Trolls. They sold they had a few Ice Trolls too, but they sold all of them. So those remain super popular. So this coming Saturday, that'll be cool. If you're looking to pick up some extras that for customs or kit bashing or whatever, or if you just haven't had a chance to grab those figures yet, perfect time to do so. Prices $37 for all the standard figures. Troll will be $110. So once again, really similar prices to what you saw in the pre-orders anyway. Happy Pursuits, I will talk about All-Stars 5 in just a moment. No, you don't have to do something to be on the list. So All-Stars 5, I'll go right into that, and I'll bring up this graphic. So this was shared earlier today, or when I say shared, I basically just dropped this on the homepage of the website. So voting for All-Stars 5 ended today. So this afternoon, we closed the vote. We calculated all of the numbers. And if you remember, the kind of twist that we had said was we had 20 fighters that were part of All-Stars 5. We broke them down into 3 separate groups. There were 4 fighters in the heroic category, 8 in the evil, and 8 in the 2.0 style bodies. Obviously, there were some people that complained that the characters they most wanted to vote for were in the same category or the same group, so they were unable to do so. The twist was this was a preliminary round. What we basically did was whittle down the 20 fighters into 10. So in this graphic that's on the screen, every fighter that has a big red X on top of them are fighters that did not make the cut. They have fallen in battle. The remaining fighters move on to the next round. And as you can see, they are 2 fighters from that heroic wave. So Romulus and Silverhorn Sentry. Those are the 2 fighters that were in the heroic section that moved forward. In that evil section, we got King Bromden Ironjaw, we got Ilgar, we got Hagnon with the blue glow, and we got Azar. Finally, in that last category, the 2.0, we got Grisha the Slitherer, we got Fastia, we got the Vampire Knight, and the Elf Ranger. So actually a pretty cool mix. When I look at these 10 here, we've got an elf in there, a vampire, we've got, a demon, a couple skeletons. So it's actually pretty cool. I say a couple skeletons. I count Hagnon as a skeleton, a dwarf. So there's definitely some cool variety. But the plan, what's going to happen? I saw a bunch of people asking, okay, you don't need to do anything to vote on the next round. I'm going to send out emails the same way we sent it out for the first round. I didn't send them out yet because we're taking a week off. We will send out the email next week. We're taking a break between the 2 weeks. So next week, the vote will go out. You will be able to vote for 3 characters from this list of 10. So we're not grouping them anymore, even though Ilgar and Azar were in the same category last time. If you want both of them, you can vote for both of them. If you want to vote for Elf Ranger and Fastia, same category last time, you can vote for both of them this time. So that's the way that's going to lay out. One thing I will tell people, we never release the vote totals. I will tell you that more people voted in this particular round than have voted in full in any other Mythic Legions vote to date. So whether it was the vote for reinforcements last year, the vote for All-Stars 4 last year, both of those, this particular vote dwarfed those in terms of overall numbers of votes calculated, which is super, super cool. The other thing, I mentioned this earlier today, when we looked at the vote totals, while we never give out the exact numbers, what I can tell you is the distance between the character that got in and the character that didn't make the cut was significant. So in that first group, we had those 2 characters, Romulus and Silverhorn Sentry. they move forward. The other characters that didn't get in, the distance between basically the second highest vote and the third highest vote, that's where the cutoff was for that first group. It was significant enough that no few votes would have turned the turned this in any possible way. They were pretty definitive, and quite honestly, like I've seen in previous years, the leaders emerge from the pack almost immediately. Almost as soon as the votes start pouring in, you start seeing where the votes are being cast and who the leaders are, and those leaders never relinquish their spot. Interestingly, though, you'd be surprised how many votes certain characters got and how few votes certain characters got. Looking at the ones that didn't make it, obviously one of the big ones on there that people were like, wow, I'm surprised, is Clavian. Clavian the Red Skeleton, he's a 1.0 figure, very, very hard to find, very expensive to acquire. A lot of people were surprised that he didn't make the cut. Well, of course, he was in that second group along with Ilgar and Azar. If you wanted a skeleton, maybe you went with Ilgar versus Clavian, but ultimately, he didn't do as well as some people would have thought. He didn't make the cut, even though he's a very expensive figure. Other figures, you'd be surprised how many people voted for Warrior. Seriously, he's a cool figure. He's a desirable figure. And even though for a lot of, the OGs or whatever you want to call yourself, a lot of people that have been around since at least Advent of Decay, Warrior was a pretty common figure. He stayed at Big Bad Toy Store for quite a while, but he's been sold out for some time, and he's desirable. He's a cool figure that people want. So I always love seeing these votes because I always love to see how the numbers come in, what surprises there are. But ultimately, I think 10 great figures are moving into the next group, and I am excited for this group. I don't know who I'm going to vote for yet. I know I told you who I voted for in the first group. And in the first group, I voted for Silverhorn Sentry, I voted for Fury Clan Orc, and I think I voted for Elf Ranger. So 2 of my 3 choices went forward, which is great. Let me look at the comments here. Okay, let's see. I was rattling on for a while, so I've got to catch up on some comments. Curtis, about the troll head with the mount, that's a Wolf King and a Len thing. I'm not sure when that will be available. Wolf King is still processing the last order. They actually just made a post this week that those orders from the last pre-order sale are starting to ship, so it will at least be a little bit before the next pre-order. Raziel, the War of the Aether figures are definitely not coming in March. If you look at the official website, sourcehorseman.com, and I will go there right now to see what the latest, because I honestly don't remember what I posted lately for that. The latest information posted on that. So let me actually do this. I'll show you something here. When it comes to actual updates about where something stands. So I'm on sourcehorseman.com, right? So you come to this website. If you're on the homepage and you scroll down, right here is there's this release status section. We update this all the time. Like whenever new information comes in that has any impact on what we've already said, what we've already listed, we update that right here. So if you look where it says War of the Aether Blade, those are expected to ship from the factory in Q3 2022. So that is this year, of course. But that is behind the Alithia wave and the Deluxe Legion Builders wave. So those are still obviously in the production queue. Things are still kind of weird, where even though it seems like we've gotten past a lot of the worst of COVID, or hopefully, there's definitely still challenges out there. There's definitely challenges in China and stuff. Things are not up to full capacity yet. So we'll see, but that's the latest information for you. Let's see what else we got here. McFly, will there be additional figures in All Stars 5 that aren't in the voting selection? I can't tell you that. You'll have to wait and see. The only thing I will reiterate is that the winners from this selection will be added to a very special wave in the near future, the sometime future. So, what that is, all I can say, I can't give you any other information. All I will say is there's a lot of people out there in the groups and stuff talking about, what's going to happen and when these are going to be available. I keep telling everybody there's surprises. You never know what to expect. So you got to stay on your toes. Yeah, Raziel says, I really, and I'm going to bring this comment up. I really hope that one of the 2.0 make it through, because I feel like we don't get enough 2.0s. Everyone seems to prefer the 1.0s to 2.0s. It is very true. The 1.0 are more popular as a whole for a number of reasons. I would love to see one of the 2.0s get through as well. I don't have a lot of confidence it will happen. I think that, some of those heavy hitters that are in this vote still are going to be tough to get past some of them. But you never know. And as we've said, being able to see the vote totals that characters get give us ideas for what we may or may not do in the future. So we're on the same page. I would definitely love to see some 2.0s in there. If it doesn't happen this time, find a way to get them out there. Okay. Star says only one of mine made it. More yellow in the collection. Yeah, I mean, Fury Clan would have been nice, Joseph. I agree. Again, that was my selection. I dig the Fury Clan, but wasn't meant to be. He is a newer figure. There's a lot of people that vote strictly on the priciest figures, the ones that they need for their collection. That's totally legitimate way to vote. So some of those like Azar and Ilgar, those are really hard to Romulus. Those are really hard to find figures. I mean, Clavian, those. So I get why people would go for them. And I mean, Hagnon has his contingent. A lot of people want that blue Hagnon. They want that new version of the figure. I mean, like I said, he's on your shelf. He's going to look exactly like old Hagnon because you're not going to be able to tell that he's blue. But I get why people want him. Let's see. At least the Dwarf King made it. Yeah, Elf Ranger's a great one as well. Star, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. The customer gets figs straight from the factory. They don't go to the studio first. I'm not sure what you're asking there. No one gets their figures straight from the factory except for, certain distributors and certain, geos. All of the stuff that comes from Store Horseman, that all comes directly to the studio, which is where the warehouse is. They're one and the same. They're side by side. So all of those go there and those are shipped out. So I'm not sure if I said something that made it seem that's not the case. Hedgehog saying my test shot arrived today. Hedgehog, I was just going to say, who'd you get? Right there, Malfar. So Malfar is a really cool one. I'll tell you, those photos that were on the website that we used, I took all those photos. And it was so, because I had already decided, I already have an Aether test shot. So I was like, you know what? I don't need any of these test shots. I'm not a test shot completist by any means. I just have a few of them, and that's more than enough for me. So I already had the one I really wanted from this wave. I have obviously the Sir Gerard. I had the Aether, but putting those all out and like seeing them, it was so hard for me not to just want to buy them all because they are so cool. They're just neat. Something about them. Okay, let's see. Just going through all of these. There we go. Slot, are they made of the same plastic? I don't know if they are exactly the same plastic. I've heard a lot of people say they are a different plastic, but they're not fragile. They're not like resin prints, like 3D prints or something that would have some more fragility than these. They are still injection molded plastic. They come through the molds and stuff, so they're not fragile. Like you're nothing that you are going to do to them. To break one of those, you'd have to do the same thing to break a regular figure. So even if there are some differences in it, it would probably be differences in, like, I think Chris calls it the durometer of the plastic, like the hardness of the plastic or something. But they're not fragile. They're definitely not fragile figures, the test shots. They're just not painted. All right, so All Stars 5, once again, that will happen. I'm super excited for that. That's going to be pretty cool. Other stuff going on. Number of people asked me if I'm going to be at Toylanta this coming weekend. I am not going to be at Toylanta this coming weekend. I do know a lot of my friends are going to be there, so seems like it's a cool gathering of, some customizers and stuff that are around this. But no, the next appearance that I will be at and that Four Horsemen Studios will actually be at ToyCon. I mentioned ToyCon, New Jersey on March 26th and 27th. So I'll be there for that, along with the studio and Legion shop. That's my next appearance. What else is going on? Actually, one thing I will mention, kind of a little off topic, but Legion's Con this year, one of the exhibitors we have is Plunderlings. The company's called Lone Coconut, but the line they have is Plunderlings. You've probably seen them, fun little goblin-y type figures. They just launched a Kickstarter for their next two, the Plunder Long and the Plunder Strong. Cool stuff. If you enjoyed the first ones, I'm sure you'll like these as well. If you go to Kickstarter.com and just look up Lone Coconut, you can find those. May not be your cup of tea, maybe something that you want to add to your collection. Either way, check them out. They're a Legion's Con supporter. They're going to be there. They were there in 2021, going to be there in 2022. So I certainly want to throw them a little bit of a spotlight just to help support their Kickstarter, which is already going strong. They're like one day in and they're already 75% funded or something crazy. So they're doing very, very well. Do I think there will be an in-stock of Attila 2.0? Or are they purely exclusive? They are purely exclusive. Those I do not believe are going to show up in Store Horsemen in that package. Now, they may be re-released down the road, single carded, but those were made specifically for the game. All of that stuff that was made as part of the game, that was exclusive to the game. Retailers did have access to them at that same time, but I don't believe those are going to hit the store. I can't say that for sure, but I'm pretty confident that those are not going to be an in-stock sale for those. Let's see. Aristotle, will there be VIP or early entry tickets for Legion's Con? I don't think so. We're still figuring out exactly what tickets are going to look like. As of right now, the doors open at 9 a.m. both days. I don't think that we're going to do any kind of VIP or early entry. What we will do, though, I'll tell you this, is setup night is going to be Friday night. So Friday night setup is going to be closed to the general public. You're not going to be able to get in the hall, simply so the exhibitors can set up their booths and not have to worry about being on and managing the public. It's also, quite honestly, going to be a nice time for exhibitors to be able to enjoy each other's company. That's one of the things that's really hard when you're at Legion's Con as an exhibitor, is if you're exhibiting at Legion's Con, odds are you're also a Legion super fan and you want to make the rounds, you want to meet everybody, you want to see all their displays, but you're stuck behind your table basically working. So that's a challenge. Setup night's going to allow all of us to do that. For attendees, however, I think what we're going to do is we're going to have badge registration on Friday night. So we are going to pre-sell tickets. I think what I want to do is to try to alleviate the line. I want to probably open up a table for a few hours on the Friday night so people that have pre-bought their tickets, if they're already in the area or at the hotel, they can come down, they can get their scan, they can pick up their badges. So the next day we can have 2 lines, including 1 line of people that already have their badges. Because if they've already got their badge, we literally just need to usher them in. If they don't have their badge, they either need to buy one or we need to scan, the ticket and everything so we can confirm they actually paid and we can give them their badge. That's a little bit of a slower process. We don't want people that picked up their badges slowed down by that. So we might do something like that. I think that's the best way to handle it, but more information on that will be forthcoming. Michael, I will see you at ToyCon. Absolutely. Any new figure focus segments coming up soon? Absolutely. Always working on that. Joe Vassapolo saying pre-order. Absolutely, that's the way to do it. Clockwork, what's the best way to make bryophytus stop shedding? Honestly, dude, I haven't had that problem. When I pulled him out of the box, he shed a tiny, tiny little bit. And I've repositioned and moved him around since, and I don't see any kind of noticeable removal of the flock. So there's nothing I can tell you to do, but I certainly haven't seen that. Awesome. And some people have, Slot is saying use alcohol to remove the flocking. Yeah, I was amazed that people actually did that, but it's seemingly popular. So very, very cool. Looking forward to meeting you too, Pablo. Make sure when you are there, you come up and you say hello. So what else have we got going on? Monks. I'm talking about monks tonight. So I was trying to think about the topic of conversation this evening, and I was kind of looking around. I was cleaning some stuff in the toy room this week, and I was looking at these customs, these monk customs. I call them the Order of the Stone Lotus, and these are some customs that I did literally quite some time ago. I haven't added to the group in a few years now, it feels like, but they're figures that I did, and I mentioned this on Legion's Lair last night. A lot of my customs, I've done so many customs over the years. A lot of them remain in my collection. Some have been sold. A number of them have been broken down, where they're older customs where inevitably when you do something like this, when you're in this hobby, you are going to get better over time. So inevitably you look at some of your older pieces and you're like, that doesn't hold up for me anymore. I want to redo it, or I just don't like that figure anymore. Certainly happened to me. I've broken down a number of my customs, but I've also got a lot of my older customs. A lot of them I still like very much, and I think they hold up. So we're going to look at some of them tonight. Specifically, there's some things about them that I think are interesting and worth talking about. Maybe some lessons that will get you inspired a little bit with some of your own thinking. And they're a cool kind of character that's not already represented in Mythic Legions, specifically a warrior monk type class. It's a popular class, or maybe not popular, but it's a class in Dungeons and Dragons. So that idea of like a warrior monk type character, I thought would be really cool. When I got the idea to try to do one in Mythic Legions, it spiraled into creating this group. So we're going to look at that tonight. Of course, throughout the evening, I'm also more than happy to answer the questions that you guys keep hitting me with. Michael, what do I think the projected attendance will be for Legions Con? We had over 500 badges sold at 2021. So I'm expecting it's going to exceed that. I would love to see in the neighborhood of 700 people there. We can certainly accommodate that easily. So 700 would make me very, very happy. That would be a good group of people to have in there. Yeah, Cultist Visionary. I did a Cultist a while ago with one of the Wendigo style heads I did, and like a red robe from Strupp Family Crafts. That was really cool. I like that too. Define Warrior Monk. I mean, it's basically in Dungeons and Dragons, the monk class, they're basically a class that they don't wear armor, hand-to-hand combat. Uh, you know, they tend to have obviously like a spiritual type connection to it. I mean, at a really cheesy level, if you think about like a Buddhist kung fu monk type character, that's basically what I'm imagining for it. All right. So let's look at some of these here. So when I first started doing these, the first one I did was a human monk. That was the first one I did, and I'll bring up the photo. Let's see here, human monk. So this was the first one, and this was a point in my customizing where I was using a lot of parts from other toy lines. This particular one uses parts from a Marvel Select Doctor Strange figure. That figure is key to this one here. Now, I've heard a lot of people over the years ask about using Marvel Legends with Mythic Legions customs. By and large, I have always found Marvel Legends to be too small. There are exceptions, especially with Build-A-Figures. Some of the Build-A-Figures certainly are a larger size, so there are some pieces that do work well. Years ago, there was a Build-A-Figure for, Thor / the All-Father. And the head on that, a lot of people dremeled that head and used that on Mythic Legions. And the size worked totally fine. But again, by and large, I find them to be too small. Marvel Select, however, Marvel Select it was always been like a weird size. I don't understand what it was meant to be. I always, as a Marvel Legends collector, interestingly, the only Marvel Select figures I ever tended to buy were the big giant ones like Juggernaut or Hulk or the Thing. Characters that were often portrayed to be super oversized anyway. The oversized look of Marvel Select actually worked, in my opinion. In this particular case, the oversized Marvel Select figures worked really well for me to do this particular monk here. So what I did, if we look at this character, there's a few things I'm going to point out. So number one, I'm going to point out his wrists. One of the challenges that I think we're still dealing with in Mythic Legions is those lower arms and lower legs. That first wave of Mythic Legions, and by the way, when I built this, I mean, it uses a Marvel Select Doctor Strange figure. So you can easily go back. This came out when Doctor Strange, that original Doctor Strange movie, was new, because that's when the Marvel Select figure came out. That was years ago. This was early on. We certainly didn't have some of the newer parts that are going to be hitting now. For instance, the Varg figure, that vampire-like little creature that's in the Alethea wave, he has wrapped lower arms. Those things are super, super cool. Those would have been a perfect replacement for what I did here. In this particular case, I had to make do. So what I did with these, and let me see, I'm going to just do this real quick. I have him here on my table. Basically, what I did is whenever I try to modify parts for Mythic Legions, what I think about is, okay, what am I trying to recreate? If you look at Mythic Legions, if you pop that lower arm off, you've got that gauntlet, right? And it's got a hole and then it goes on to the peg. So that's what I'm trying to recreate. So basically what I did here, and I'll pop this off, what I did was, let me see. It's understandably tight. I took this lower arm from the Doctor Strange and I sliced it off. I made a nice clean slice. And then I just took a Dremel and I just hollowed out a little hole. Because that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to recreate the piece that you're replacing. Nothing here is modified, right? All of the movable parts, that's not modified at all. The nice thing about this too was Doctor Strange came with a bunch of different hands, some expression open hands. Now, we do have open hands. We do have bare hands for Mythic Legions now, but back then we didn't. So the nice thing about using these lower arms, not only do I get the wrist wraps, but I get the ability to use these hands that were from the Doctor Strange figure. So I did that, and it just pops right on. And I mean, it retains all movement. So it's actually a really cool solution. Something you can absolutely do. If any figure that you can make that lower arm work like the official Mythic Legions ones, you can basically replace those lower arms with something new. I also use that waist part here. So again, another thing is if you look at your Mythic Legions figures, if you break apart a Mythic Legions figure at the waist, what you're going to realize is you've got that pelvis piece with the big ball, and then you've got that torso that pops on. If you just pop that torso onto that waist piece, it looks horrible. There's a giant gap there. That gap is never meant to be seen. That gap is totally covered up by that waist armor. Again, I know what I'm trying to recreate. So that's what I'm doing here. This lower skirt type piece, that just slides right over that, and it basically covers that waist gap that I want to replace. This looks nice because unlike the the normal side pieces, the normal waist armor that have the loin, this hangs down a lot further with that skirt-like look. You've got this nice belt there. So it gave that monk-like look that I was going for. I did have to keep the lower armor on the legs. I could have tried to find lower legs that were either wrapped or were bare legs, but they're so covered up anyway. And, you know, the more pieces on a custom, the more pieces on the figure you replace, the farther and farther it gets away from it being a Mythic Legions. So I like to only replace parts when they're essential. The feet on this are actually pre-Mythic Legions bare feet. Those were from a guy named Marcus Aiken, who I used to buy a bunch of custom stuff from that he had made those. And the head is actually interesting. So the head itself, and I'll bring this back up here. So the head is actually from another Marvel Select figure. I'm curious if anyone in the chat can actually identify where that head comes from. Let's see. I will, before I tell you where it's from, I will see if anybody knows. The necklace he has on in these photos actually come from one of the Bandai Samurai Star Wars figures, specifically the Darth Maul. I don't display them like that. Death by Mexico. Yes, that is Drax the Destroyer. So that is Drax. Marvel selected a line of Guardians of the Galaxy, but they were more comic focused Guardians of the Galaxy, not the movie versions. And I was looking for a bald head. Again, I did this. If I was doing this today, I would have a plethora of heads to choose from the third party community. At the time, this was pre everyone doing third party 3D printed parts, so I had to scour old toy lines or other toy lines, and it was actually hard to find a bald headed character that was to scale, that had somewhat of a serious type look to him. So when I found this one from Drax, it worked really, really well for me. Like I did with a lot of those old heads. It seems like it's been years since I've dremeled a head out because I do so much third-party stuff these days. But similarly, I took that head, I dremeled it out so it would fit and just popped it on there. So that was the first one I did. I did repaint his body a little bit to get the skin tone, but that's the first one I did there. And again, it still holds up, and I like some of the pieces of it. I like some of the parts I've just shown and some of the creativity in using those other pieces to create what I think looks like a Mythic Legions warrior monk. Like when I looked at him, I felt that even with those outside pieces, it hit that Mythic Legions aesthetic. Marvel Select have really good sculpting. The details on the belt and everything. And I didn't paint the belt or the skirt. It's a rubbery type piece. I'm always hesitant to paint the super rubbery type ones because I find that a lot of times the paint doesn't adhere to it as well as it does to some of the harder plastics. But I didn't need to. I felt like the colors worked. I felt like the paint apps were there, that it actually made sense. So as soon as I was done with him, I started thinking, well, I've got a monk now. Maybe he's a traveling monk. Maybe he's out there seeking enlightenment. But what if he's part of a larger order? What if he's part of a monastery? So I got to thinking about what other kind of monks could I do? And what I found to be most interesting is, and I've done this with my customs many, many times over the years, is trying to create designs and combinations that are atypical, things that you wouldn't expect. I especially love characters who you imagine one way, or races that you imagine one way being presented in a totally different type of fashion, a totally different type of character. An orc, for instance, that's the second one I did. So at this point, every orc that we had seen in Mythic Legions was an evil orc. Okay. And we haven't gone too far from that, realistically. Tharnog from the upcoming Poxus wave, that orc shaman, is one of only two heroic orcs that we have seen in the line. The other one being Bryophytus, the Lichen orc. So those are two characters that are part of heroic factions, but they're both newer figures, right? All Stars 4 and the upcoming Poxus. Everything prior to that, every orc we got, the Shadow Orc, the Fury Clan Orc, every green-skinned orc, the female orcs, they were all evil characters, or at least they were part of evil factions. So the idea of taking an orc and using him in a heroic fashion, I thought was really interesting, especially as a monk. I was trying to think about, imagine an orc pacifist, an orc that didn't want to be involved in bloodshed and war and all that stuff. I thought that was an interesting kind of juxtaposition of two different themes. Interestingly, I also had some orange armor to use. So I used the Unkin figure. Now, this is a figure, I love when I looked at some of my old customs, they use parts that today would be brutally hard to find. Let me bring this up real quick. Where's the orc? Here we go. So here's the orc, and this orc, I kid you not, uses armor from an Unkin, and that head is actually a repainted Urzok head. So that white face paint that Urzok came with, I kind of dug that as a monk, but I wanted to add on to it. So if you look at that head, and I'll bring it up here, you can see that he's got those kind of like that pattern of like dots that kind of come out, above the triangle and up the middle of his head. Those are all pieces that I painted on. But that is legitimately an Urzok head. Now, of course, when I did this, Urzok was not the rarity he is today, nor was Unkin for that matter. So I do like looking at these because it's kind of a fun little moment in time, a fun little reminder of how it was back then. But this uses essentially, and I'll bring this down for a second because I do have him as well. This was my answer because I had Unkin and I didn't know what to do with that orange armor. It didn't make sense to me in the sense of it being an orc. I didn't understand why an orc was wearing such bright armor. But thinking about monks, I've actually, there's some monks actually that live not too far from my house. There's a little monastery not too far from here. And they wear orange robes. And so I was thinking orange, the association of orange with monks, that worked for me. So that's how some of the design elements came together here. Once again, these bare feet long predate the ones from Mythic Legions officially. Those were also like the bare ones on the human monk. Those were from Marcus Akin as well. You can see I put all these beads on, and a lot of times you see a lot of these monks that have these big beaded necklaces. I literally just bought some a beaded necklace from Amazon, and I made those myself for this. The only thing that's new on this are the hands. So originally when I made this, and if I go back here, you can see that in this photo, these original photos, he actually does have the armored hands on in this. That is one thing that at the time, I didn't have any orc hands to replace it with. Since the hand packs came out, I did swap out the orc hands here just because I thought that made more sense for the orc monk. So that's the one change that I've made to him. The skirt he has on is actually from an old Lord of the Rings figure. So fun little character there. So now I had two. Now I had my human and I had my orc. And is that staff for Marvel Legends? Yes, that staff is the one, or the mace. That mace is the one star that actually came with Unkin. Let me see. The detail of that strap across the chest makes it for me. I've always, it's funny, I'm like that. I've always felt like, especially the characters that don't have, if they have armor on, if they have chest armor, in theory, the shoulder armor could be attached to that somehow. But whenever I've used shoulder armor on a bare chest, I've always felt like I had to have a strap. It's just part of the aesthetic that I always like. It seems to make sense for me, and I do like the way it kind of cuts the grain, the design a little bit. Yes, Joe, that is Unkin's mace, absolutely. So let's see. Yeah, Orchid Arms. I mean, the original Unkin was kind of Orchid Arms. That's kind of how they made it originally. Eric, sorry, you have to catch the replay. I can't go back and start over. Going back. Okay, so a lot of people got Drax the Destroyer. Very cool. So at this point, I'm starting to think and I'm starting to get excited. And I've done this a number of times where I've created little, mini waves of characters. A lot of times I've done it in one sitting. When I did all of my mythic shoguns, all my samurai customs, I did those all at once. I had an idea that I wanted to do them all and literally just bang them all out at once. These weren't that way. These were more of a slow burn where, like I said, I did the human and then I got the idea to do something else and I did the orc and then I started looking around and I started saying, what other races can I do? So now I'm really getting excited for variety. I love variety in my collection. I love variety in life. Okay. I think diversity is what makes us as people more interesting and stronger. I think different viewpoints, different people are what make us great and exciting. So I wanted my Order of the Stone Lotus to have some diversity in terms of races and the kinds of characters, both for, like I said, the visual representation on the shelf and just because it was fun for me to do so. I didn't want to do another human monk. I didn't want to do another orc monk, but I kind of just said it right there. I wanted to do a dwarf. Yeah, McFly, if you've ever seen my Mythic Shoguns, I did a whole bunch of them. Did a whole show about them as well, too, actually. So the third one I did, let's bring this one up. This is my Dwarven Brewmaster. So that's another thing. At this point, I'm starting to think about monks, and I just mentioned that I used orange on the orc monk because orange was a color that I associate with monks. So this is another thing that I love to do is when I'm working in a style, when I'm working with a theme, start to think about the other aspects of that theme that you can touch on. And it may seem cheesy, but again, I approach this as a design challenge. The same way that I would design a website or a poster or whatever, I design these customs sometimes. Not always. There are times where I'm just playing around and I'm just messing around with parts and paints and what happens, happens. But in this case, I really was starting to plan it out. So one of the things I'll often do is I'll get, a whiteboard or just a pen and paper. And I will start to jot down a number of things around the theme that I'm going for. So when it came to monks, there's a number of different tropes that I can go after. There's a number of different things that I can work into some of these designs that will be part of this aesthetic that I'm going for. So many monks have a tradition of brewing beer. And I liked that. I thought that was a really fun thing to do. And I said, well, if I'm going to have a brewmaster, a monk brewmaster, he clearly needs to be a dwarf. So I love this head. This is the King Bromden Ironjaw head. One of the coolest things about this head is if you have this head on the King Bromden body and you put the crown on it, it totally looks one way. But if you take that crown off, it really does kind of transform that head, that character, to look like a different character altogether. So that's what I did here. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see. Um, Obviously, just taking off the crown is super easy. I painted all those dots on his head, similar to kind of the pattern that I used on the orc as well. Once again, you can see this particular one. This one actually does use a Marvel Legends Doctor Strange lower piece here. So this was one where I'm trying to remember why I got this Doctor Strange figure. For whatever reason, I ended up with a Doctor Strange figure that I didn't need. And I'm looking at this. Yes, and I did paint this one. So I think I know what this was. I think I might have gotten this Marvel Legends Doctor Strange as part of the wave. Like I bought the entire wave, probably to make the build a figure. And I think this was the Astral Doctor Strange. If not, it was just the blue one. But whatever it was, I didn't need it. I didn't need the figure. And a lot of loose Marvel Legends figures are worth essentially nothing. So I tried to find a use for it. Now, it is a little tight at the waist, but with this, and it's tough to see. Let me take this down because his beard covers him up. But I'm going to pull off his head so you can see. He uses that tunic torso. So that tunic torso with the belt at his waist and these belts, it really does look like one unified piece to me. I painted them all the same color, so they really, really flowed. I even gave him this little hood. This little hood is from a articulated icons ninja figure. So it almost looks like he's got, kind of a hood underneath this tunic there. So little things hanging off his belt, not even sure where those are from these days. And again, another pair of bare feet for Marcus Akin. I made good use of these feet. I bought a bunch of them off him at the time because I wanted characters that had bare feet. That was, again, one of the challenges early on with Mythic Legions was everyone had on these big, giant armored feet. So I love the fact now that we're getting bare feet, we're getting booted leather feet, especially in the Alithia wave. Those pieces coming from the Alithia wave are going to be an absolute game changer. Looking back at the photos here, you can see, and I don't have it in his hand, but I gave him that little, one of the figures from the articulated icons wave. There was actually a drunken master in that wave, and he came with this kind of, it's probably supposed to be a jar of sake, but whatever. It works as just a jar of beer for me. I also have some barrels that I often display him with, some like brew barrels and everything that I think are a lot of fun. But this was the third one I did, my monk brewmaster dwarf. Very cool. Slot is saying we desperately needed those booted feet. Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, I've said this many times, but thieves and rogues have always been one of my favorite kinds of characters. I having to give any of the thieves I've done for my customs kind of armored feet, even if you kind of paint them to look like leather, they're definitely not as cool as what we're going to get with like the Valet figure and the Lord Bardrick figure. Super, super excited for them. Let's see what else. Give him the Stein from the Troll Riding Goblin. Yeah, Star, that's a great idea. Again, it's a newer piece from Wolf King Customs. This was long before those existed, but that's actually a great, great idea. Pablo, his crown is probably long gone at this point, to be honest with you. That figure, I made him years ago. Yeah, it would have been a Duramu wave. Absolutely. Okay. So everyone agreeing with me that they like the idea of a brewmaster and of bear. Very cool. Yeah, Valak is actually the figure I'm most excited for in the Alithia wave. Everything about that figure is just super, super cool. The layout, the parts, the hood piece, that thing around his neck. Plus, he's got a pet. I always loved, and I'm going to do a video. Someone made a recommendation to me recently, or a request to do a video about like 1/12 scale animal figures that can go with Mythic Legion. So I'm working on shooting that. I'm gathering all that now. I'm going to get that shot. But I love, when I was a kid and I collected GI Joe or played with GI Joe, I always loved all of the characters that had animal pets. So the fact that Valak comes with that, that bird whose name is Cinder, by the way. That's super cool. I love that. All right, next. So thinking about these characters. So I've got a human monk who's pretty straightforward. He's pretty vanilla. Then I've got my orc monk. So I like the fact that the orc monk, he's from a race that is normally warlike. And the story I wrote for him was that, he turned away from that kind of bloody life to find peace and enlightenment. Then I've got my monk brewmaster with my dwarf. So in thinking of other kinds of things with monks, someone just being incredibly enlightened, someone being so devout, I liked that idea. And I was like, what if they were so devout that nothing could take them away from their vows, not even death? Of course, that means that I had to do a skeleton next. So this is my skeleton monk. Now this, because I wanted some variety, rather than using like a skeleton legion builder, which is a 1.0 size, I've already got my human, my orc, and my dwarf. So I wanted to get some different sizing in there. I wanted to add that variety. So using the 2.0 skeleton soldier. This is the one that came with basically two different torsos. You can make it either a male or a female. That is the figure that I used here. Once again, I will take this off. So here's the character here, and this uses a rubbery robe type piece from a Lord of the Rings Easterling figure. And what I did to try to make the face look different, not only did I paint it with that pattern, but what I did was I had they're essentially ribbons. So these ribbons are actually from an old Spawn, like I think the character's name was Tiffany. It wasn't Angela, but it was one of the Angel Warrior figures. I'm almost positive it was Tiffany. I had that. It was originally on like one of her weapons or something. And I said, you know what? That'll be cool almost as like this like top knot weird ponytail thing. So I just drilled a little hole right in the top of the skeleton's head and just glued that right in. Pretty fun character here. Here we bring him back up. And I'll go to this one. Originally for these photos, that's actually talk about being, low LBC, kind of low quality there. That's that waist belt is literally an elastic. It was an elastic that I wrapped around his waist. The elastic has since deteriorated and fallen off, so he's now got a little bit of a leather belt around it. It's at least a placeholder. I've been meaning to get a little fine piece of rope and just tie a little rope belt around it to get it to look more like the design that I have here. But you can see also over here the way that ponytail kind of hangs down. And that weapon comes from a Masters of the Universe figure. I honestly don't know which one. It was something that I found in my fodder bin at some point, so I got it probably just buying a lot of things. But it reminded me of those staffs that have the rings on them that, like, I've seen kind of like Chinese monks, I believe they use those. So I tried to create a version of that here. It already has the ring up top, so I added a couple additional rings to it to create that look of that like multi-ring type staff. Again, when I'm doing stuff like this, I'm using real world things as inspiration, but this is fantasy. Okay, I'm clearly not trying to create actual historical looking monks. It's a skeleton, for goodness sakes. But I'm having fun with it, and I'm using real world things, real world influences to inspire me to create some of these things. Very cool. See what we got going here. Goblin mounts in a pet video would be great. Yeah, Savage. I'm working on something like that. Uh, yeah, we'll see what the Necronominous wave has to show us. Wish the Four Horsemen would make some new translucent feathered wings. I don't know. Those would probably be pretty limited use, so I'm not sure. The shaping staff, Walter said. Okay. Curtis says the staff is from a Motu Classics Entrapta. I could not pick Motu Classics Entrapta out of a lineup if you had a gun to my head. So I have no idea who that is. It clearly ended up in my collection through buying some kind of lot of accessories or something. But thank you for pointing that out. So the last one. So now I've got these four, and I'm okay. I've got to do one more, and I want to do kind of the head of my monkish order, the most enlightened one. And admittedly, I kind of went a little cheesy on this one. I was in a mode where I was doing a lot of goblin customs, and similar to what I did with the orc, using a traditionally evil character in a non-evil fashion. I went there again. I did a goblin. It definitely looks a lot like Yoda. I played up on that Yoda type thing, but again, it's cool. Like, I dug the design, I dug the character, and the lesson that I would find in it is not every custom you do, not everything you do needs to be super original. It doesn't need to be like it's never been done before, or it's like really big thinking. Sometimes doing something that's expected and cheesy works really, really cool, and it's really kind of fun. So that's what I did here with my goblin character. And let me bring him up. Now, this is an interesting one too, because as you can see in this display, he's got two different possible looks to him. So the photo all the way to the left shows him fully robed. So he's got that kind of robe with just that one arm out. That robe is actually from a Star Wars, I believe, General Grievous figure, but not even a Black Series figure. That is from literally like one of the 3 3/4-inch figures. Now, it works here because I'm putting it on a fairly small character, but I will tell you that the only way it fits is to actually pop his arm off. So let me take this down for a minute and show you what I mean. So I've got my character here, I've got my goblin, and what I basically did was, this is his other arm. It's not plugged in. If that was plugged in, this robe would not sit on top of him. So that's just what I did. Was I was like, you know what? You're never going to realize that with the robe on that the arm is missing. So it totally worked for me. But back to this here, a few things that I did. Number one, I painted his face. So this uses a Nubnik head. And I like the idea. All of the monks, actually, except for the human monk, have face paint on. So for this one, because the orc, the Urzok has kind of that arrow face paint, I wanted to do something similar for the goblin. So all of that face paint was painted on there, kind of to match the Urzok face paint a little bit. The body itself was, interesting. So I painted the torso and the lower legs and the lower arms, those browns, to make it look kind of like leather. The feet are actually from a Lord of the Rings Berserker Uruk-hai figure. I love that figure. I've used those feet with those sandals a number of times. Because while I dig bare feet, I also like sometimes these characters to have some sandals on, those like leather looking sandals. They're kind of slightly smallish feet, so they work great here for the goblin. The lower skirt piece he has is from some random Mortal Kombat figure. I don't remember which one, and I honestly used it on a dare. Dennis Derby, my good friend, Dennis and I have traded figures and traded parts for years with each other. And one of the things I love about trading parts with Dennis is if I reach out to Dennis and I say, "Hey, I'm looking for this part. By any chance, do you have an extra?" Not only does he almost always say yes, but when I get the box from him, he usually throws in a bunch of other stuff I wasn't expecting. And it's usually wacky stuff. I do the same for him. I've sent him a bunch of stuff over the years that I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with this. I'm going to send it to Dennis. So Dennis sent me literally a full Mortal Kombat figure. And it was like a weird scale. He basically sent it and said, "Hey, I got this super cheap for parts. I've never been able to figure out a good way to use it. Maybe you will." So I kind of took that as a bit of a challenge. And it worked really, really well here. I broke that lower piece apart. The part that hangs down like the loin type piece, that is actually from a Stan Winston Realm of the Claw figure. But the other part here, again, by painting it to match the rest of it, kind of looks like a cohesive piece, looks like it all goes together. Realistically, that between the body, the feet, the loin, and the waist, those are from 4 different figures and actually 4 different toy lines. If you add in the robe over here, there you go. You get a whole other figure and a whole other toy line by adding in that Star Wars 3 3/4 inch figure. The staff is actually from an Articulated Icons, one of their monk type figures. That just kind of wooden staff worked really well here. So that is my character. And then once I got done all that, I was able finally to do this, to do my group shot. So this is where that all led me, being able to do this group shot where all of them are positioned together. I've got my, as I said, my Order of the Stone Lotus. Fun little group. Again, old customs. I've had these around for a really long time. Realized recently that I've never actually shown them or talked about them on the show, even though we're literally here on episode 84. Thought it was time to do so. So hopefully you enjoyed that little kind of trip down memory lane in my thought process of creating these type of things. The reason I do these types of shows, the reason I share these is just to kind of unpack some of the design thinking that I've done, along with some of the tricks I've done, some of the techniques I've used, solely because I'm hoping that they inspire you to not necessarily do exactly these, but to inspire you to do some of designs of your own, to make you say, "Hey, I've been stuck on this one piece, and something you said there has just gotten me to think about something I'm trying to do in a different way." That's what it's all about, getting inspired, learning new techniques, learning new things to apply to your own work. So hopefully this look at my Order of the Stone Lotus helped do that for you tonight. With that, I am done my formal presentation. So I've got a solid almost 20 minutes left on the show, which means it's time for a conversation. So if you have any questions, anything you want to talk about, you can literally ask me anything you want. I may not answer you, but you can certainly ask me. Okay, I'm going to go back a little bit. Slot, no, I do not have a good green match to paint Goblin's skin. I'm someone who literally just takes my paints, mixes them as close as I think they are, and it's just trial and error. So, and some of the Goblins have different paint tones anyway, so there's no one actual match for it. Eric says, see, that's exactly it right there, Eric, where Says, I don't think I would have ever made the mental leap to just leave the arm off, but it totally works. You just expanded my mind. It's exactly what it's about. It's about thinking about things differently and saying, wow, that was such an obvious solution to it. The arm doesn't fit, don't put the arm in. Literally, the robe covers it anyway. You'll never know. So happy to hear that that kind of expanded your thought process a little bit there. Star asking about the feet. I did answer that, so you probably already heard the answer, but that was a Lord of the Ring, a Toy Biz Lord of the Rings Berserker Urukai. Okay. Oh, Star, I get what you're saying. Translucent wings to give the monk somewhat of an angelic vibe. Yeah, that's cool. Dig that. Is the Hellfire Goblin the only red goblin in the line? Are there any Fury Clan goblins? So the Hellfire is the only red goblin that's come out. Are there Fury Clan goblins? Not officially. They have mentioned, Eric Cornboy had mentioned before, that the Fury Clan are not exclusive to orcs, that there are other members of the Fury Clan. It's why I've done so many Fury Clan types of characters for my own customs and my own display. I have done a Fury Clan orc. It's super fun to do. I have done a Fury Clan goblin. They're super fun to do. Painting a goblin red, it looks really, really cool. Chris, what's up? So Justin is saying, I've gotten some success with Citadel Elysian Green. So there you go, if you're looking for a paint match there. Joe saying, what character type would I like to see as the next deluxe builder set? So Joe, you're talking about like the Barbarian set and the Knight set, what we're getting in the new Tactics wave with the Orc sets and the Elf set. So if I take out all of those, if I say, okay, let's not do a repeat, let's not do another Knight set. I mean, a dwarf builder set would be cool. A goblin builder set would be cool. And a skeleton. Those are probably the ones that I have in my head. Just think, I mean, of course, I can go outside of existing races and I could think of, you know, other races that would be cool in Mythic Legions that aren't already represented. But just sticking within what we already have, any of those three, similar to how the Barbarian Builder Pack or the Knight Builder Pack, you know, built on the existing parts, put a lot of them in there, different color decos. I think any of those three would be pretty cool, Joe. Star, any customs you're really excited to work on but haven't yet? I mean, like I've said before, all of the new parts in the Alithia wave, I'm excited for those. I'm also actually really excited for something that we're cooking up at Legion Shop for the Deluxe Builders wave. There's a series of parts that we are working hard on that are going to go with those specific figures. So I'm super excited to actually finalize those and get those on the workbench, get those out there. I'm actually going to have some teasers of them at ToyCon in a few weeks. So those are things I'm excited for. Let's see. Anyone get a shipping notice? I mean, if you ordered a test shot, you should have. Eric says, as a customizer, I love the idea of anyone making their own version of a custom I have made. Inspiring someone to try something is a great reward. Absolutely, Eric. I mean, I love Eric's work, and Eric has been inspired by some of my pieces. I've seen Eric take my gargoyle recipe, take some of my samurai stuff, and do his spin on it. So I agree with you completely, Eric. Being able to see somebody else taking your ideas and putting their own twist on them is incredibly, incredibly rewarding. Curtis saying, when I hit a wall on a project and it's just not working, do I put it aside and work on something else or just push through? I tend to put it aside. The only time I ever push through is if there's a legit reason why I have to do it. For instance, if I need to paint a part for a upcoming Wolf King sale or a Legion shop thing. And I'm like, I just need to paint this part to take the promo photos so it can actually be marketed and sold. That you don't always have the luxury to just put it aside. But realistically, a lot of those projects are a lot less ambitious because, I mean, a lot of times I'm painting a head to put on a body to show a possibility. In some cases, I don't want to go too complex because I don't want to say, like, hey, look at this custom head on a custom that is ridiculously hard to execute on. You want to show that head on almost like a stock figure body because it really shows people that, wow, with just that head in the figure I already have, I could do something super cool. So most of the customs that I hit a wall on are my more ambitious projects that are more full customs that are for me. When I hit that wall, I do tend to put it aside. And I can argue either one, that pushing through is beneficial as well. For me personally, I have found that pushing through is a recipe for me trying to take shortcuts just to get done what I'm doing because I don't like to feel uninspired. I don't like to feel like I've hit that wall. So I just want it to be done. Um, I would prefer to put it down. And Curtis, there have been times that I've put down customs for 6 months where literally I put it aside and I'm like, I'm not ready for this. And then something sparks that where I'm like, oh, it's a piece that somebody releases that I had, that was like the missing piece. That was the missing ingredient to finish something else. Sometimes I see another custom and someone does something and I'm like, oh, the way they treated that paint application or the way they hung the soft goods here, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Or it, like I said, it jogs you. You know, sometimes it's not like, oh, they did that and that's what I want to do, so I'm going to copy it. Sometimes it just gets your mental space, it gets you in a different mental space, gets you thinking, and you're like, oh, I know what I can do with mine. And if you look at what inspired you and what you did, sometimes the connection is incredibly not obvious. But that would be my suggestion. I put it down, works for me. Justin, what exactly is the Fury Clan? So if you read the bio on the Fury Clan orc, it is a specific group, and on the bio, it talks about the Fury Clan orc. The bio doesn't say that the Fury Clan goes beyond orcs. That was something that was basically said off, outside of the official bio by Cornboy. But it's something that customizers have kind of grabbed onto and been like, oh, cool, I can paint other things red and call them Fury Clan. But it's basically a group that are known as much for their intelligence as their ferocity. So while they look incredibly, furious, and they're incredible, fighters and so forth. They are brutal, but they're also very smart and they're very calculating, which I think that's kind of cool as well. The shadow orcs are more monstrous. If you read the bios for Gorthok, the shadow orc, they're ones that are truly like animalistic monsters. The fact that the Fury Clan have a little bit more intelligence to them, I thought was a fun, unexpected spin. So that's what the Fury Clan is in a nutshell. Rich, what All Stars 4 figure do you think is best for custom fodder? Looking into future body types being available. Okay, let's work backwards. Not Bryophytus or Mephitor. I mean, Mephitor is great. It's a goblin now. You can get cheaper goblins than that. Bryophytus, because of the flocking, yeah, you can take off all the flock, but that's just get an orc. So I take those two out. Realistically, you're probably looking, do you want to go skeleton? Do you want to go knight? Or do you want to go more barbarian type warrior? Because I think that's going to make sense. Tibius and Scaphoid are great, but they're skeletons. It's hard to use the bone parts for anything that's not a skeleton or a zombie or, like an emaciated type character. I mean, they're bones. So if you want fodder to make other undead, those things are awesome, right? If you want to make a generic knight, Sir Owain's really good. If you want to do, Vetus is cool. Vetus's armor, that red armor, is very, very specific. So putting other things with that armor. Black looks great with it. Gold looks great with it. But there are other things. Silver, I don't think works as well with it. It's not horrible, but so that's something to consider as well. I don't think any of them are bad. It really just depends. When you say what's best fodder for customizing, they all have their uses. If I had to pick one, I'd probably go Sir Owain just because it's the generic knight. And the general generic aspect of it means that you probably have the most flexibility. Yeah, Nikki has a goblin green paint recipe in her videos. Joe says he loves painting Furies. Yeah, Joe's painted a bunch of Fury Clan characters. He enjoys that. Any idea what's going to be in stock at ToyCon? So similar to Zolocon, Zolocon had reinforcements, All-Stars 4, All-Stars 3. You're probably going to see those. There will also be some other figures, some older figures. Once again, you're not going to see anything from 1.0. They don't go back that far, but you may see some Advent of Decay stuff, some Soul Spiller, things like that. Those are typically very limited. Might be a case of each there. They are limited to one per person at the table, so you got to get there early even to have a shot at those. And when I say get there early, keep in mind the line forms well before the doors open. We do bring different things on Saturday and on Sunday. So some of the more common stuff like All-Stars 4 and All-Stars 3, those will be there both days. But some of those more rarities, those things that are one per person that are guaranteed to sell out, those we will have different ones on Saturday and on Sunday. So, Saturday's busier. I always tell you Saturday's a busier day. Sunday's, less of a crowd. But there's different ones both days. Will we ever see Four Horsemen release the feathered wings? Possibly. I mean, I don't know. Star, I don't think you're going to see a lot of mutated, diseased type limbs. Keep in mind this is a family-friendly line. That's important to the line. It's important to the aesthetic. So they've kind of avoid even Poxus. Like you look at Poxus is gross without being like full on nasty gory. Like if you look at like figures from like was it Resident Evil or like Silent Hill where they're just gross. That's cool. It works for that aesthetic. It works for that property. Poxus could have gone down that route, and they definitely, when Eric sculpted those pieces, he showed some restraint. He held back a little bit. I think that type of aesthetic is probably the closest you're going to get to what you're asking about. Joe, great idea. You actually said this, and I meant to actually say this, and I totally spaced until you did this comment. So Joseph says, any ideas from the Poxus wave to add to the monk group? Absolutely, Samir. So Samir Scrollwater, who let me bring Samir up right now because now you got me excited because I forgot that I wanted to talk about this. Poxus wave. Where is Samir? Here we go. Okay. So this character right here, Samir Scrollwater, this is one that I imagine adding to my monks. So this particular head right here, when I look at this head, I totally imagine this on a really thin body. Okay. Like I know Planetary Dog Toys have done some like 2.0 style torsos. This is a 2.0 style figure that, have really, like really taut skin over the bones. That's what I'm imagining this character being. I'm imagining making him like very much. I mean, this head is meant to be like, Indian. So I'm imagining making him like very much like an Indian style, which isn't a monk. I totally get that. But that type of aesthetic, like an Indian kind of holy man, that's one of the things I really, really want to do with this, which I think will be a really nice contrast because the Samir figure himself is such a classic looking wizard. Like you look at this, and when I look at this character right here, I don't see this character here as being a as being like an Indian holy man. I see this as being very much a Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings style fantasy wizard. I love that look. But being able to use that head to create that like Indian holy man, I think that's going to work really, really well. So yes, Joseph, thank you for reminding me. That's what I plan on doing. What faction would warrior monks be affiliated with? Maybe the dragon faction that came on the shield for Rhaegar. We've never learned anything more about that faction. So maybe that fact that Rhaegar's bio talks about him being like from the far east. If you read Zende's bio from the Paxos Wave, it talks about Zende being from a place outside of Mythos, that map of Mythos. So that was the first mention we got really of, between Rhaegar and Zende, of there actually being places outside of that map of Mythos. So maybe these monks are part of a faction we haven't met yet. Savage, I don't think they're ever going to make individual parts to purchase. That'd be a nightmare. Like to try to do that, to try to sell people, oh, they just want feet or they just want lower arms. No, that's not in the plans for this line. Hands and feet pack, yeah, that makes sense. Head pack, we're going to get a head pack with, All Stars 5. By the way, I didn't mention that part of the vote. That vote's been tabulated as well. We are looking at the winners for that, figuring out what other heads, what decos are going to go in there. So stay tuned for that. Nate, will I be making a Kavoth tribute figure? Someday I will. Kavoth, which if you don't know, the character Kavoth is from a book by Patrick Rothfuss. The name of the book, the book series is called the King Killer Trilogy. And I say trilogy with a heavy dose of sarcasm because book 3 has not come out and it is very, very long awaited. But the King Killer series, I guess, the first book in that series is called Name of the Wind. Second one is called The Wise Man's Fear. Wonderful stories. The main character in the book is called Kavoth. Literally my favorite fantasy character. Those books, the King Killer books, are my favorite fantasy books I've ever read. Absolutely love them. Everyone I've ever recommended them to that has actually picked them up and given them a shot and read them has reiterated, has reinforced that and said, I absolutely loved it. Thank you for the recommendation. Nate is one of them who picked it up based on that recommendation. Nate, I absolutely want to do Kavoth, but he is such an interesting character. I don't feel like I have the parts yet to be able to make him. And I have hesitated wanting to go the third party route. While I could easily just be like, okay, make this head for me, make this, make that. I want something that uses more Legion's parts than I feel I have available to use right now. So it is on my to-do list for the right time. Star, how aggravating when I'm in the middle and I want to change something. It doesn't happen to me that often because I plan things out. The only time that I don't plan them out is when I'm just playing around and I'm just seeing what happens. And that's totally different because the sense of play, going back and messing around, that's part of the process for that type of a custom. So that doesn't bother me. And when I'm carefully playing them out, I plan them out to a point that I rarely would have to backtrack to say, oh, I messed something up, or I'm changing my mind on something I wanted to do there. So it's 9:03 now, so I'm going to try to get through the last of these questions. We don't know anything more about the Fury Clan Star than what I've already told you. How many figures come with fake fur? Not a ton. I mean, there's a few of them. Vorthog has it. I mean, a couple of the females like Fallon and Cassia, Faustia. If Four Horsemen asked me to create another figure like Sir Gerard, but it had to be a female, what would it look like? What parts and what faction? Goodness. I have no idea. I'd have to think about that. I'll tell you this, I wouldn't design it at 9:04 as I'm wrapping up a show. I would give it a lot more thought than that. So let me think about that and get back to you. The hand packs, from the Aether wave fit on 1.0 figures. So the human hand and feet packs and the orc hand and feet packs that are out now, they fit on like literally the one I used on him. They fit on 1.0 figures. You can actually get them on 2.0 figures, but unless you're doing it on a goblin, they don't look right. Goblins, they look fine because they're too big, and goblins with too big hands and too big feet, they look fine. They're a little comical. They're kind of weirdly monstrous. It works for goblins. If you tried to put those bare hands on like a female or an elf, it would look ridiculous. They're way too big. The hand and feet packs that are part of the Alithia wave are also for 1.0. Those leather hands and leather feet, those are 1.0. They're the same parts that come with the Valak figure in the Lord Bardrick. The hand and feet packs in the Poxus wave are for 2.0. So those are similar to the ones that you see with like Samir and Arazak. Star, any chance we'll get the gun holding hands resculpted to hold weapons at more than 90 degrees? I mean, there's going to be different wrist joints so you can hold it like that and stuff. Jay asking about the Evil Lynn tribute, Melina. She was at ZoloCon. I don't know if she'll make an appearance at ToyCon, but she was there recently. Slot, I just answered that. What is my biggest hope for the Necronominus wave? I can't tell you, but I will tell you what I really wanted, and I asked about it, and the answer was yes. So I'm getting my biggest want for that wave. I just can't tell you what that want is. And no, I've never carved a beard. I've used Sculpey to make a beard. Didn't look real good, but I've done it. Any options for open or posed armored hands? Yeah, actually, the Drax figure that I got this head from, he actually has some armored type hands that have some other expressions. I've used those before. They don't fit perfectly, but you can get them in there. You can use them. That's the only ones I've ever done. Yeah, Eric, on the Rhaegor figure, which is a crazy, crazy rare figure, his symbol, his faction logo is actually like a dragon head. If you know the Rhaegor figure was a tribute to a Mythic Legions collector, a very early Mythic Legions collector named Ray Wu, who passed away, unfortunately. So that figure was, a loose tribute to him. That symbol, that dragon symbol, it's literally the only figure it's ever appeared on. There's never been anything else mentioned or said about it, but that's why I just answer that way, because what the hell? I'd like a female Jinn. Do you plan on making a custom one? I actually have made a custom female Jinn. Let's see if I can find it there. I did make a female Jinn. I love the genies, so I did this one quite some years ago. Let me bring this up. So this is the female Jinn that I did quite some years ago. This uses as a spirit bender body with a head from Lucretia. So what I did, and I'll enlarge it, what I did with that head there was, I painted it blue. It already had kind of a monstrous Jinn type look for me. I just drilled a little hole in the back of her head. Same principle that I did for my skeleton, but I drilled that hole in the back of her head so I could actually put the that ponytail from Azaria in her hair. So you can see this is that blue gin there. That is one of my classic customs. That's one of the very, very first customs I did. And that is the female version that I did to accompany him. So there you go. Sage McFly, I really don't. I'm not the person to show you how to do sculpting. Sculpting is not my thing. I've literally done a few minor things, but I am not qualified enough to give you a tutorial on it. Diego, will we ever do a fan voted new character? I mean, they did that both with Vorgus, the Blood Armor, and in the second Kickstarter with Ravina. So it's been done 2 times in the line already. Will there ever be another one? I mean, I wouldn't say never. I can tell you this, the studio loves doing it. The studio loves giving fans a say in things like that. So will it ever happen in the future? I think the signs are pretty positive that at some point down the road, there will be some other kind of fan vote for a figure like that. Just where it fits in and where it makes sense, that's the big question. Drink of choice while customizing water. It's not real sexy. Probably just my big thing of water. That's probably about it. Curtis, will I be partaking in corned beef and cabbage with green beer tomorrow? I will not, because I don't like corned beef and cabbage, and I do like Guinness. So I will be having a Guinness tomorrow. And for food, maybe fish and chips. Maybe I'll go shepherd's pie if I want to go, or cottage pie if I want to. Depends what I want in it, right? But we will be going out tomorrow evening to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. I will definitely have a tall Guinness for all of you, and happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. I hope that you enjoy however you choose to celebrate it or not celebrate it. Joe says, I'll try to get a fan vote rolling after Poxus. Very cool. More parts to use that way. Awesome. Well, with that, I'm going to call this an evening. I will be back here next week. Not sure what we'll be talking about yet. Maybe I'll have a guest. It's been a little while since I've had a guest on, so I think it's about time. I have to think about who might want to come on and talk to me next week. But stay tuned, because I'm sure we will have a great conversation. Same Mythic time, same Mythic channel. Until then, remember, this coming Saturday, that is the 19th at 11 a.m. Eastern time, 11 in the morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time on storehorseman.com. The All-Stars 4 in-stock sale. If you're missing any of those, that's the time you want them. Until next week, I can't wait for that conversation. Have a good night, everyone.